Hello and welcome to the I3 lecture series hosted by the Masters in Digital Photography program at the School of Visual Arts. We are thrilled to have photographer and video artist Adam Magyar as our guest speaker. Originally from Hungary, Adam is currently based in Berlin, but that is just a manner of speaking because he is one of the most restless, nomadic artists you will ever encounter. Hannah Frieser, who is in our audience tonight, thank you, Hannah, for being here. Executive Director of the Center for Photography at Woodstock, describes his work eloquently and succinctly. Magyar catches moments in time and place that can neither be seen with the bare eye nor a conventional optical camera. The beautiful images combine the aesthetics of classic photography with a technology that redefines our understanding of linear time and singular space in a perfect blend of science and art. Recent solo exhibitions include Midnight Moment, Times Square Arts, New York, Stainless, which traveled to Museo Casa Grande Hidalgo, B24 Gallery in Debrecen, and the Museum of Fine Arts, Houston. Continuum, which was shown at Julie Sol Gallery, Griffin Museum of Photography, Houston Center for Photography, and Lightwork. Collections include New York Public Library, Museum of Fine Arts, Houston, Hong Kong Heritage Museum, Deutsche Bank, and Microsoft. Adam's photographs have been featured in the books In the Life of Cities, Light and Lens, and also in Lightwork's contact sheet. His work has been published editorially in After Image, Brooklyn Rail, New York Times, PDN, Flash Art, Digital Camera Magazine, and Catalog. Please help me welcome Adam Magyar to our lecture series.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for Tom and Jaime for the introduction, and also for the invitation. I'm very excited to do this. I have to admit this is the first time I'm using Zoom. I hope I won't be really clumsy, because I'm not very much into technology. So I'm going to talk about a little bit how I started to be a photographer, and then I will talk about my previous works. And at the end, I'm going to show a little bit about 3 of my new projects that I've been working on recently. They are really not ready yet at all. They're pretty just in a study phase and experimental phase and realization phase. But since this is a studio visit now, I think it's okay. I was to be in New York for this, and yeah, I'm really sad that I'm not there, and I'm really missing all the diversity of New York. I haven't been there for such a long time now, but it's also exciting to let you be in my studio and you see my machines a little bit. So when I was younger, I actually didn't think of being a photographer and an artist. It was not too far from me, because my father is an architect and an artist, and I grew up in his workshop, and we always did things, and creativity and creating things was always near and always in my life. But I was interested in technology and digital electronics and programming, but I actually didn't want to have it as a job, I guess. And so pretty soon I realized that actually I was more like a visual type of person. So I started doing design, and I traveled as much as I could. All my money I earned, I spent on traveling, and I was buying memories and experiences. And that's how I started taking photos. Of course, I was interested in different cultures, but basically I was interested in understanding myself and life in general, and trying to understand it through observing life around me. And I was looking for answers for very naive questions. I didn't really find any, but as a consequence of traveling, I started taking photos. And since no matter what I was doing, it was always about people. And I take this thing off. So it was always about people. And I was really not talkative. That was really, really precious time. It was really deep. It has a huge impact on my life. But I was really not talkative, and I couldn't talk about this. So when I went home and my friends asked me how my trip was, I could always say like it was good, but obviously it was much more than that. But I didn't know how to talk about this, because you cannot really talk about deep things with simple words unless you are a poet or a writer, novelist. You cannot really tell things with words, because you somehow kill them. And that's why I started taking photos, I guess, because I had some eager to share things. And since it was all about people, I started capturing people. I was doing pretty like normal street photography, like when you crop a portion of the space in a given time, and then you have a story, and it's beautiful. And I like the genre. I like to look at those photos, but to me it was like kind of I was not satisfied, because there was too many stories on my images, and I was interested in being itself and existence, and I was looking for something else, because when people looked at my photos, they saw other things that I want. I just wanted to see. I just felt compassion to people, because our time, our life is finite, and for me it was dramatic enough, and that's what I wanted to talk about. And I was struggling so much what to do, and I fell really in love in photography. And I put a small lab together in our basement, and I was studying how to process things, enlarging and developing, and I was really, really deep in love, but I didn't know what to do with that. I had so many beautiful sleepless nights struggling about what to do. And then I just have to start my presentation, because I would like to show some very early works. And so I started capturing people in sequences. So everyone was in the same situation. And because I took people out from their own surroundings, and with that, you know, I mean, I already started to be interested in time. Like, these are like waiting rooms. I went to literally every small railway station in Hungary, and I captured small waiting rooms with passengers waiting. This was cinema project in India, where I was taking photos of first people in the first row. So kind of like I started thinking in sequences, and I saw this series as a mosaic or a patchwork of several images, and I saw them in one image. I never showed these works actually, and I never exhibited them, but that was a few years of my work. And 2006, I was heading to Shanghai by the Trans-Siberian Railway. And it was a very monotonous journey for a week, and you know, the time zone was changing continuously. And I was heading to Shanghai, and I was excited because I knew that there would be some massive crowds of people, and I really wanted to do that. I was really interested in that, and I had the thought that I wanted to somehow process and capture this never-ending flow of people somehow, and put all those people that I captured independently. I wanted to capture them all together in one image. So. And that was the time when my technology, my previous interest to technology came back, and that was the time when digital cameras came, and there was a conversation whether use digital or analog. But I didn't want to use digital to replacing analog. I was interested in to do something with it that was not possible with analog, or at least not in the same quality. So I bought a desktop scanner for like $50. I took it apart, and I built a camera from that. That's how it works. I just put the sensor behind the camera lens, and as you can see, it just captures a single pixel wide line from the space. And just like with the scanner, when the sensor is passing through the document and capture it line by line, and when you render those lines together, you get a digital ink copy of the image. With this camera, everybody who's passing by the camera and the line that is scanning scans itself on the images. So you can see how the image is rendering at the bottom. The good thing about it that although the images are very spatial, I don't need that much space. So basically, I'm working from very small LAs, and like a very small portion of place is enough for me to make these images. So the thing about these images is that the horizontal axis is not space. It's not left and right. It's earlier and later. So the right side of the image happened before and the left side later. And just like all my projects, I always do it global, because I always travel to big cities and do the same project around the world, because I've been always interested in the common between us. I'm never really searching for, of course, personally, I'm interested in the culture in different places, the differences of the culture, and I try to take as much as and learn as much as I can from it. But somehow I'm also looking for the essential human being part, and then the core somehow, which is the same for every human being. And also, I'm always interested in the human society and this kind of global world that we are living in. And what is also very important to me in this project is that that line, that single incomprehensible line, it's very incomprehensible information, is representing our present moment that we cannot understand, because we live in the past and in the future. The present moment does not really exist. Once you exist in the present moment, meditation or something, the past and the future disappears. So, but all these incomprehensible informations, when they come together, they create a story that becomes like our memory and our history. This is like the chronological order of all the moments, moment after moments. So these are just short periods, sections of the infinite time. I know time is not infinite. It started at the Big Bang 14 billion years ago, but I think for us, in our dimension, it seems like very infinite. Just like our time is very finite in the infinite time. And this image, you can see a bus stop. So the bus came into the image. It spent about 1.5 minutes there, and then towards the end of the image, the bus left. These images are usually stories of about 2 minutes, between 1 and 3. It depends on my distance from the people. You cannot really talk about exposure time, it's recording time. And another very interesting factor of this project that everyone is always heading to the same direction. That's because the first register information is always your nose, and then it's going towards your back. So it doesn't matter which way you are going originally, you are always heading to the same direction. Which is to me, it's nice, because on these images we are all heading together to a future that we all share, no matter which way we are heading or what our efforts are. Together, we go together somewhere. This is an installation shot from my Lightwork exhibition. It's from the Julie Sol Gallery. This is the National Gallery in Budapest. The prints are about 100 inches. I'm not sure about feet. It's 2.5 meters almost. This is another project that I was working in parallel with the flows. It doesn't have that many layers. It's more like a bit more like aesthetical. It's a perspective study. These images, digital composites of people. Everyone was actually in the same spot originally. And I'm working from bridges, and I capture them from different directions, and then I put them together according to their position. That it has to be like. It's really interesting that it has to be correct. Our eye is very sensitive to patterns, repetitive patterns. Not like our psychology, that doesn't really see our repetitive patterns that easily. But our eye is really, our eyesight is very, very sensitive for that. And also, when someone is not in the right position, right perspectively, not right position, you can immediately see that something is wrong. And of course, I like details. So in all my works, I always try to include as many details as possible. And I make pretty large prints, but you can go close and you can see. I like that kind of part of photography. I never enlarge anything. And then stainless came. I spent one summer in New York at some point, and I always had this idea in my mind to capture trains with my camera, but it seemed to be so obvious that I never did that. And I had one day to kind of kill before I left home. So last day I just went down to the subway, I took a photo of the train, and I really liked what I saw. Except that my camera was not fast enough for that, so I didn't have enough horizontal resolution. But because the camera could capture only 600 lines a second, that means 2 inches every second. And the train passes by in 3 seconds, so that would allow me to print a 6 inches print. So I realized that factories use the same time of camera. By the way, I forgot to tell that this technique is, of course, not mine. They use it for photo finish cameras in Olympic Games to decide the ranking if it's not clear. So with the flows, I was actually doing photo finishes in urban environments without goals and rankings. So goals, there are goals, but there are no rankings and no finish line. So I bought one of these industrial cameras that they use for mass production for quality checking. And I developed a little thing about that to control this thing. And I went back to New York to scan trains. This camera can capture 20,000 lines a second. So I had like, I could have like a proper amount of information and data. Although it's happening really, really fast, I see nothing, basically, what's happening. But I will show you some details, so you will see how many details the camera could capture. I was caught by the police very quick after the second day. They were pretty nice. I got a $25 fine for using tripod, and my interrogation lasted only for 1 hour. But I couldn't keep working that way, so I put everything together in my backpack. And I don't think it looks much less suspicious, but I never had any problems after that. I was never arrested after. I mean, it was quite a few years ago, so I'm not sure how it would be these days. But I never had problems with this. Also, I learned how to move quickly, I guess, how to work quickly, and I was trying not to attract too much attention on me. So I was doing this series in New York and Tokyo and Paris. And what I really liked is the lighting, because the train is happening, the whole train is happening in the same physical space, because it's passing by the scanner. So on the horizontal axis, there's no perspective distortion. It's front of you. So they kind of like a blueprint. It's very kind of like an engineering kind of stuff. And I wanted to depict this industrial object as a beautiful thing, not like that kind of dirty thing that we think about when we think about the subway. So this is one of the reasons why the title is stainless, and also because of course the trains are made from stainless steel in New York, but also because these people are not posing. They look like they are posing, and they are framed already, but they're not posing because they are just turning towards the door. They usually turn out inside the train, and before the train arrives, they turn outside and they see nothing because the whole thing is blurred out. They see nothing, I see nothing. So there's they kind of maybe a little bit less public mask on them than they usually do, or we do, or I do. So this is another reason why I call this stainless. So again, quite large prints. I do like 2 meters and 6-7 feet. These are silver gelatin prints, and because I'm using these kind of gadget technologies, but I also appreciate so much the traditional, and I will get back to this video that you're seeing now. Then, but I really appreciate the traditional techniques and the traditional value and the high level aspects of prints. So I try to the final object I try to make accordingly. So I always have to sort a few technical problems, like this one made the images straight because I am using handheld, so the images become wavy. This is another little application that allowed me to make non-linear distortions because there are no such things. So whenever there's a task that does not exist, I try to make a solution for that. So I think I was really lucky that I was interested in that when I was young, because I have a little extended toolbox. So I don't have to rely on Photoshop or After Effects or those kind of things only solely. Of course, I use them too, but I can think a little bit more free. This was a light meter that was measuring the flickering light, so I could send it to my friends before I went to a place to see if I can realize the project or not. It was the instruction manual for them to see how to operate it. And but sometimes the light was still flickering and it was a problem. So like this one, I made this thing to get rid of those lines. I mean, I have to make many of these for all my project. I mean, I kind of enjoy that. So I mean, it's not the core of my work, but this is part of my workflow. That's why I'm showing them. It's a Paris train. So I'm always trying to capture, or I'm intrigued by capturing people in between. in places where they don't belong to, streets, vehicles, because this time just vanishes from our subjective timeline. We don't remember those. These moments just never in our mind at the end of the day. We don't remember that I was waiting for the train, I was walking from the bus stop to the office, and because in our subjective time we emphasize, and normally in photography we also emphasize. We select what we take photos of, and these cameras work more like the objective time. They work like a clockwork. They capture everything equally. Of course, I'm doing creative editing stuff of selecting, of course, but in theory, and in theory, these machine vision cameras are kind of quality checking in a human factory without selecting. So this is also something that I'm really interested in, and that's because of course I'm always trying to find some kind of objective truth, and also because I'm interested in the core. And then I started doing videos for the stainless series because the flows, people like sometimes thought it was too weird, and I was like trying to with the trains, I was trying to move towards more photographic looking images. But with them, people didn't know that trains were actually moving. And I wanted them to know that the trains are moving and frozen in time and kind of became like fossils in this movement. So I started to take videos from trains of platforms, and I was capturing the platform from the eye of people on my trains, what they would see if they could realize what kind of high-speed thing is going on. And then eventually this work became another series, because first I just thought of it as just an explanation, as a side thing. My first exhibition, when I showed the first video, it was just like on a small screen, just to tell people what this whole thing is about. And eventually it started to work much better. And then it became a whole new work. I'm going to show you 3 of these, just 3 experts. And this one is from Paris. So with all my works, I try to balance between still and motion, actually. And all my works, or most of my works, I think almost all my works, start with motion capture. And the result is even still all motion, but it's somewhere in between. This work is nearly happening and nearly does not happen. It's people, of course, moving, but these videos every second just captured, stretched to 1 minute. So now you saw like 2 minutes. It was captured in 2 seconds. So people are pretty motionless. So they kind of like wax figures. They look like that, and you kind of like have this 3-dimensional feeling of moving around in the space, and kind of I'm trying to change the way people perceive time when they look at these, and also I try to emphasize that life is always happening to us, even in these moments but we try to neglect and accelerate, try to be over. Life is there, and we are, I think, very often responsible with our limited amount, brief time. And so with like stretching out this present moment, I try to make it tangible. And I have one from New York that I didn't show before. A few months ago, my friend Nusra Durrani asked me if I may have something in my archives that he could use in his movie, The American Prayer. And I found this one that I captured at the time of Halloween in New York. these are just excerpt. Of course, the full videos are about 12 minutes long. Just a few exhibitions up shots, Museum of Fine Arts in Houston. This is Saitama Art Biennale near Tokyo. This is the urban video project, the Everson Museum of Art in Syracuse. This is Times Square Arts Midnight Moments. It was lost 2019 summer. And I have another video series called Array, which is kind of similar, based on the same principles. And all my works, we are heading together to somewhere. This time it's an descending. I captured this one in Seoul. I have a couple of these from Seoul and from Tokyo. The same thing, moment after moment, stretched out time. Kind of being lost. Space and time, routine, limitations. I think I forgot to say that the sound is also stretched out by the same ratio. So the trains, you hear the original sound of the train stretched out. Here I captures this sound of the steps on the stairs. It's in Hayri, near Seoul. It's also gallery. This is the Julia Seoul Gallery in New York. And Matter is a new project. It's on hold because since last March I was not able to capture. So I'm looking forward. Hopefully I'm going to be able to travel once again and keep working on this project. I'm doing multi-exposure videos. So I set up the camera exactly in the same place, and the process kept changing during my work. But I set up the camera exactly in the same place with the same. Everything is the same, and I keep going back for days, and then all those days are projected on each other. It's pretty much the opposite of my other works, where I eliminated the surrounding and the environment. So in all my works, I just keep the people on the images, and you can't really tell where it is. There's no architecture around them. And on these videos, I'm going to have stills too, but this is basically also a video project. I have the infrastructure and the surrounding, and the people are blurred out. But I have a short demo of something I already had, so I show it first, then I will talk a little bit. So here I again try to make the flow of time and the river of time visible, with projecting days and hours on each other, and but here the living get dissolved, and it loses its face, and faint its self boundaries, and yeah, only the traffic light remains in clearly, or in a clearly definitive form. It's a faceless crowd. And I mean, the other thing is that, of course, I was always working with eventless situations. I wanted to create something from unimportant moments, and the COVID just changed the way I see these works now, because that time when I was working on all my project, that was like an everyday moment, and I always try to make people feel that those moments to exist, even we don't evaluate them. Now I think we all would really evaluate those moments. We would really like to be there on the platform, just like the way we were, being bored of it. I think so. Like since a year ago, I see my works like very differently. And I think it's just now they mean different. So of course, now I've been talking about 40 minutes now or more about like unimportant situations, and they are like not the same anymore. So I'm not sure how it's going to change my narrative about this. And I started capturing wind. I guess because I spent a few years in the Himalayas. Like I spend every summer in the Himalayas. It's not possible right now, but I did it for quite a few years, and I started being familiar with other factors of simplicity than time, like rivers and water, which was always working flow, was kind of like that. Rivers I was watching, but wind was not part of it. Yeah, I show you a demo. It's really like just a study yet, but I would like to show it, and then I will talk. So, of course, it's not only about wind, it's about flags, empty flags. There are no symbols, no colors on these flags. Therefore, they can symbolize many things. They can be the metaphor of many things, between decoration to warfare, many things. Leadership, rebellion, nationalism, freedom, dignity, or peace, belief, wisdom, danger, segregation, unity, like the flag of Olympics. No matter what, it is usually has some power. This one actually on this video is a Hindu flag. I do different ones, and I will do different one. This small demo I just put together from pieces of scratches. This one is never going to be like an actual final work. But here I also try to balance, and I like the tension. I try to create a tension with that, and that's because we don't know what is under the flags, what crowd is under the flags. Is it religion? Is it war? Demonstration? Is it for peace? Is it for anger? We don't know. And like the clock hand doesn't care about what is happening in that very second. If somebody is about to born or to die, the wind doesn't care either what kind of flag it blows. What I mean by that is that I don't believe in predestination or fate in a religion meaning, but I assume that maybe everything works according to the laws of the universe somehow. That's why it's blown. But there's a big question mark here. I don't know. But and I don't say that we shouldn't do effort, even if it's the case. We shouldn't put effort into things, even because we are trapped in this type of consciousness that we are in. But the question is always whether there is free will, even if we are not just part of an equation, but we have an automata working inside, and our patterns. So even if not the universe is driving us, our patterns and our automata is driving us. So my question is always whether we can change. And in a way, I think we cannot really change. I think we are born with some sort of a senses. I often say that I'm like a chef who is born with a set of spices. And every day I try to cook something else, and I do, but it always stays the same. But it's still the question whether we can change at least certain things, even if it tastes the same, whether we can change something, or we keep our mantra regardless how faulty it is, or we just blown by some power, our fashion, our practice, patterns, things that we got used to believe in, so it's comfortable to stay in, or driven by the mass, by the fear, by the anger. Or we can get out of somehow from this massively wired program, or we are just being blown. So I think this is why I'm doing this project. But it's hard to talk about this yet, because every time I'm doing something, usually I start working on something because I have an image in my mind, or I have images in my mind, but some of them got stuck, and I start photographing it out from myself, and I keep doing that image. And during the time I'm doing it, I kind of understand why I had that image in the back of my brain somewhere. And sometimes, of course, I just see connections after like 10 years. So yeah, this is something that intrigues me in doing art and photography, because this is also a tool to understand myself. Besides the fact that, of course, when I decided that I wanted to take photography serious, I thought it means that I wanted to do something that people wanted to watch, and I wanted to challenge people. I wanted them to think. So this is why I don't really mind to talk about technology sometimes a bit more than people expect an artist to talk about, because I saw many times that people are intrigued by that and challenged, like why everyone is heading to the same direction. They keep coming back. And when someone comes next day and doesn't understand something, I'm really happy, because it means that they kept thinking about it, about time or whatever my message was. So I have one more project. So this is also just like an experiment. Actually, I was just doing it recently, very recently. Actually, last 2 weeks. I was working on it before, but I got into some advanced realization. I'm still working on the technical part, but let me explain. Oh, I forgot about this. Yeah, about the flags. I was trying to. I was planning to capture flags in real, but I cannot. So because I was to do it in India, and I had to come home, so I set up this wind thing in my apartment, which is, in a way, it's good because it's controlled. So the wind is controlled by computer, so I can have the same choreography about the wind. All can capture it over and over, the same thing. So it's kind of useful. And I also bought a sewing machine, because I don't do enough things yet. So I would like to learn that too. So I would like to tailor different kind of flags. So this is another thing. I built this rig, this light rig. I take portraits, and there are like 60 something flashes around, flashlights, and they synchronize with the camera. So I'm just capturing like small short videos. So every frame has a different light source, and so afterwards I can play around in the 3D environment. I can play around with the virtual light on the portraits. They're like photographs, they are still portraits, but I can play around with the lighting. The point is not to make like post-production studio lighting. It's not the thing, but I would like to play around with still images and lights that actually happen at the same time. yeah, but this is not really what I want to do, because I can put several portraits in the space, and I can have like virtual lights move in the space. But what I'm actually thinking of to do is installations where originally every image is pitch dark, and with gesture sensors, you can give them light, and you can explore these people. And I'm thinking of capturing people in beyond hope, in trouble, like refugees. So people who normally nobody really cares about. Even if we feel for them and we are not against them, it's easy, but it's not enough. I think we need to do more. And I'm kind of like, I'm thinking of like how to, just make, this kind of like tangible, this thing that you can care. But when you leave, they turn back into darkness and hopelessness. I was thinking that maybe during time, every visitor could leave some tiny amount of light on the portrait. So during the time they would shining up, especially if it could be like connected with some fundraising or something. So yeah, I'm really not sure what the future of this project is, but I'm interested in doing this, and I really hope that I can make something out from it. So I think I would like to say just one thing. I'm always talking about people and we and us and you, but I'm actually talking about myself, because who am I to talk about others? I know nothing about people. I know nothing about life. I was searching and searching, but basically I really, the more I search, the more I know know nothing. And I know that. So when I'm talking about people and when I'm talking about us, I'm talking about myself, and I'm talking about me being lost, my insecurities, my I am not sure, my being lost in big cities, me being lonely in the crowd, and things like that. And I think this is what I wanted to talk about today. So thank you very much for your time. But I don't know if there are any questions. I'm going to try to answer. But I just would like to mention a few people, if it's possible, because I feel like, because I'm at as a photographer. So I met many great and humble and nice and encouraging people during this journey. But there are a few people who have like special places because they believed in my work in a way that they put effort in it, and perhaps took some risk and invested time and energy. Sometimes even before, when nobody else did. So those people have, of course, a special place in my garden. And I wish I could say thank you to Rhonda Wilson, Rhubarb. Unfortunately, she is not with us anymore for a few years. But Hannah Fraser is here, and she's doing an amazing job in Woodstock, the Center of Photography. And that time, she was working still in Lightwork. And as far as I remember, my exhibition was her last show that she created. And she really put an amazing work and a lot of efforts into that exhibition and the traveling show and the catalog. So eventually she turned my career into the direction of being a full-time artist. And of course, I'm very, very grateful to Julie Soul and Edna Cardinali for those 6-7 years that we worked together. It was really fruitful in the Julie Soul Gallery, and definitely changed my life. And of course, I'm saying thank you for Adam Magyar for representing my work in Toronto and the Zsófi Faul Gallery in Budapest. So that's all I wanted to tell today, and let's see if there are any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Adam. We will take questions through the chat, so you can start writing them up, everybody in the audience. Adam, thank you so much for the talk tonight. I mean, you laid out the philosophical and aesthetical context of your work so beautiful, in such a beautiful manner, and I'm sure we all have so much to think about in the coming days. But I don't think you addressed the subject of inspiration and talked about any of your artistic influences. So I'd be curious to hear a little bit more about that.
What do you mean exactly?
Well, you could understand it two different ways. I guess we all have trajectory as artists and are inspired along the way by other bodies of work, other visions. So that's one thing. And the other thing that I would be very curious to hear about is, where do you currently look for inspiration? Is it photography? Is it sound? Is it film? I'm just curious.
Well, my main inspiration is always my journey, what I see and what I experience. That's how I started, and this is still. I mean, I'm processing my life via photography, and I'm processing photography via my life. I had a lot of time in my. I mean, like every year, generally, I have a period where I'm not here, but I'm somewhere else, and where things got very simplified, when I have very few elements around me, and sometimes very real, especially since I'm going to the mountains. It's a very new word to me, to be among all these very few but very real and very serious elements. And I didn't know it before. I was always in cities, and I had the same feelings always about this machine that we built around us, around the security that we built, but it's also made us very insecure. The difference between fear and stress and anxiety. So that's pretty much the core of my inspiration, is also putting myself in the situation where things are just different. That means my patterns do not work. So if I judge that kind of word from my dictionary, it's not really working. So I have to write a new dictionary for that kind of word. That means I look into a mirror. So that's what I've been always looking for since I was like in early 20s, because I realized that once I do this, and especially because I mostly do it alone by myself, so then it becomes very, very deep. And I have like very, very beautiful, very deep periods of my life when I had a lot of opportunity to feel and to learn about my reactions. Other than that, I mean, if I look at other arts, I always feel inspired when I feel like embarrassed, when I feel that, I have to stop doing art, because I can never make such a good stuff. Like Chris McCaw, like I was like, I couldn't touch photography for like years after I met him and I saw his works. Like I was just like, that work is just pure genius. And my all-time favorite is Theo Jansen, this Dutch kinetic sculptor. I just love his brain. And of course, I was always very influenced by Sugimoto because I loved those black and white word and also the time with the cinemas that was early, like very, very much influenced me. And also Misha Gordon, the crowds of his work was obviously very, very inspiring to me. But generally, my work is coming from my thoughts, and I don't really look at too much art actually. So I do, but yeah, I'm very self-taught, so I was not like studying anything basically. Everything I know, I learned from myself and from researches, and I'm not very smart. I think I have patience. So when there's a problem, I'm just sitting there and try to work on it as long as there's no solution.
Thank you, Adam. Let me continue with a question from Tom Ash, our department chair. And he says, thank you for your wonderfully challenging philosophical lecture / experience. This aspect of photography that can show us things we cannot see with the naked eye is so integral to your process. What was your path to getting this important work seen? And I think you started to answer that in your acknowledgments, but if you don't mind, telling us how your career has evolved professionally, that would be great.
Well, I'm from Hungary, and when I started taking photos, there was no art market there. I mean, even the term artist was something to avoid. It, like in that part of the world where you are sitting now, it's a profession, it's a job, and that time it was like you didn't call yourself an artist, like even if you were an artist, because it felt like woo. And also there was no art market. I never actually thought of making like a living out of it. I was just very passionate, and my only reason was to show it and to do it. And when I was in Shanghai, I met a guy. He's my friend now, Lars. He's a German man, and we met on a train. And he saw my first flows, and he started to encourage me to show it in a gallery. He had a friend, Thomas, in a gallery in Shanghai, who had a gallery there, and he just introduced me. And then we made an exhibition, and I had like 10 photographs there, and he was asking like artist statement. I had no idea what it was. I had to Google what artist statement was. What the edition is. I didn't know what edition is. I had to research what edition is. I don't know. What's the pricing? I don't know. I don't want to sell. I want to show. I had no idea that photography or art is sellable. I just wanted people to see. I don't care if you sell it for whatever you want. I just wanted to put it on the wall. So, but he sold everything, and I was like, okay, that's a new perspective. And that's how I moved to Berlin. Next year I went to Rome. I wanted to travel in Europe and figure out where to move, because I knew that I had to move to make it happen. And eventually from Rome, I ended up being back in Asia. I went to Hong Kong and Tokyo, and more or less I finished this project. And then I came back home, and then we moved to Berlin. And I started working really, really hard. I had no idea what I was doing. I just knew that I wanted to make it happen. And I worked like 22 hours a day for like 2 months every beginning of the year. I barely slept anything, and I just all my money I put in there, and I started showing my works in the States, and went to portfolio reviews, and after a few years it started happening. Yeah, that's the short story of it.
You, thank you for the short story of it. So much of your process is so sui generis. It's just so you. I love the part where you said you send out a little kit to a friend in a different city so that they can measure the flickering light
Mhm.
on location. I mean, I don't know anybody else who does that. And I was just wondering if there's other peculiarities or just generalities about how you prepare for traveling to another city to produce work, and even how long you want to stay there. Do you stay with friends, or do you apply for grants, or do you have a residence somewhere?
Uh,
How does that work for you?
well, but actually, that light meter got lost. I sent it to Paris, and it got lost in the post. Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, probably nobody really has problem with flickering light, because you have that problem only if you capture with whatever 1,000 frames per second. So otherwise, it's not a problem. Um, so yeah, traveling can be kind of tricky because, well, yeah, I have a lot of stuff to travel with. Now I'm staying in hotels or guest houses. It depends. It depends what I'm doing. And my routine recently was that I spent 2 months somewhere in India to ventilate out all the big cities, doing post production mostly. And also, I take all my stuff to the mountains. So sometimes I like our air cargo to up to the Himalayas from Delhi, and I go by bicycle up there. And then the end of the season, I air cargo it back to Delhi, and I come back by bicycle. And I'm working there. And when the weather is fine, I go for trekking for a few days. And I deliver my I bring my stuff, my computer. Depends what I'm doing, but like, of course it's not all this thing. But usually I travel with a 3D printer because I keep doing things when I'm away. And I used to travel 10 months a year. So I always spend only no more than 2 months in Berlin altogether. I usually just come home for a week or for a few days, just change my clothes and put stuff in the washing machine and change my gear from trekking to whatever, photography. And then I leave. It can be sometimes tricky because of the security, because I have like batteries or like modified laptops, and so yeah, things sometimes happen, like they close the whole x-ray line and I'm standing there for 40 minutes, 20 people around me, and then
Wow.
nobody so everyone is scared to give me a green light. So like the main responsible for security has to come from the airport and let me go, and then they check everything. So things like that happen sometimes, but it's actually kind of entertaining in a way, so it's okay. At least there's something to tell as a story. um yeah, but yeah, generally it's kind of complicated, especially yeah, to take all my stuff with me. And yeah, it's a kind of, because I have to be prepared for developing on the way, and doing parts, and be kind of flexible to be able to do whatever I want on the way.
There's a question from Harold Sikema, and it says, is there a conversation between me and we, for example, about consent when you shoot people? I imagine people do not assume you have generous intentions on the subway.
Are we talking about like a privacy thing, or I'm not sure about the question.
I think that's what it refers to. If you ever engage with people,
No,
with
because
viewers.
everything happens so quick that there's no way to engage really. Um, yeah, no one really. I mean, um, you, yeah, I mean, of course, this new project that I was just talking about is very different, but yeah, I mean, this urban things are obviously not. Um, it's just happening. I don't even know what my cameras are capturing.
Right.
But I mean, yeah, this is
And
always a
if you're
question.
inside a moving train, there's no way you can
Yeah,
talk to
yeah,
people on the platform
yeah,
anyway. So
yeah, yeah. But I mean, it's also, I know it's always a question about like privacy. Um, um, I don't have a solid answer for that. I try to be humble and I try to depict. I really hope that I depict people on a nice way, and I hope I don't hurt anybody. I I think that about the thing that I always try to avoid is couples because it can be sensitive. Um, mm, which is usually not very difficult because everyone on my images are generally alone. There's very barely any interaction between people because I'm capturing situations in the morning and people generally go to work by themselves, and so it's generally not a problem. And otherwise, I think that like street photography is pretty valid. I wouldn't like to delete all the street photography that was done by people who were not aware of being photographed, because that's how we have very different idea about the recent history of the last 100 years, because all those images just burned in our brain. That's how we know how all the struggling is about us in the world, what kind of troubles people are in, what kind of troubles we make to others, what are the things that we could do things or efforts for. This is how we know how was Paris in 1930, how was a rock bar in 1980, so in New York. So I think at some point it become documentary what I'm doing, because I'm still doing street photography no matter how I approach this and how much technology I'm involving into the process. I'm still doing street photography, and besides all my concepts, and I'm trying to include. It's still also documentary, and I hope that these videos, the platform videos, will at some point will be like an interesting documentation of how the Earth was in the early 21st century. And I think that time nobody would mind to be on these videos. So like I don't think that people would mind to be on a work or a piece or an image like that 10 years after, when you see yourself being younger. And or like those people, kids or grandkids, would be, I think, especially grateful to see their parents in a in a photograph, and not only mine but any. So I think it's a concern today of people, but I think I really hope that after years, it's this kind of concern vanishes and it just becomes like a nice documentation. It's like any kind of street photography I'm talking about.
Adam, I want to thank you so much, and I want to thank everybody in our audience for coming out tonight, joining us.
Thank you for the
Coming out.
opportunity. I'm really happy.
Thank you.
I'm really happy. Thank you so
All
much.
right.
Thank you
Thank you, everybody.
everyone who joined this conversation.